Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for those who are in Jamaica and other countries that are early in time. Now, my presentation will be looking at the impact of online training on skills development in the region. I actually will now go ahead and share my screen. So if you will allow me, moderator. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we are.
Yes, thank you. Just trying to navigate this so it doesn't block me. Right. So the concept of online training in TVET has been a relatively new phenomenon in the region. And with the implementation of change in any curriculum, we have to contemplate the processes for that particular change. A change in curriculum can take the form of a change in delivery modality. I've been looking at areas that will consider the process of implementing the change in the delivery mode. I'll also be considering learning theories and learning approaches, challenges implementing the innovation, and success factors related to online training. Additionally, of course, which is what the topic implies, I'll be looking at the impact of online training on skills development in the region and framework for considering teacher competencies in intensive online environment. Now, in 2012, UNESCO advanced in a publication that TVET needed to focus not only on the basic entry-level technical and vocational skills for specific occupations, but on developing higher order skills demonstrated by globalization and generic attributes required for working in the 21st century, such as the ability to work independently. The speakers before me would have articulated how the expectations of workers have evolved due to the knowledge economy and required competencies for the digital era. So I don't necessarily want to repeat some of those, but just to emphasize the fact that massification of higher education and a rapid advancement in technologies now require a new set of skills for the labor force, and employability also dictates that the learner now needs to be able to use the new technology, and digitization has now become a factor. Universities have incorporated skills development in curriculum or vocationalization, and the gap, and this is so to bridge that gap between academic and vocational training. I'm not seeing my screen, so I'm just adjusting the section here, right? And this is done through partnerships with industry to ensure that the workforce aligns with industry demands, as well as the mobilization of a critical mass in enrollment. As a result, we now see an increase in access to TVET. So there is a prevalence of computers and software technology that facilitates simulations, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, video conferencing, and other computer-assisted learning tools. This is also enabled by the introduction of mobile learning, smartphones, tablets, and also we've seen where there's an expansion of learning to marginalized groups and communities that have been underserved. The inclusion of open education resources have now increased access to TVET, and we have seen where others before me would have spoken to some of these. So basically, as mentioned before, I'm looking at the fact that TVET can be considered as an innovation in the region. The use of the readiness factors related to the implementation of an innovation was the degree to which there was a formal recognition within the school system of unmet needs. Now, in the context of my presentation, an innovation is defined as the process of translating an idea or invention into a good or service that creates value or that the customer will pay for. Right? Now, others have stressed that the newness of the process of change as an essential consideration to the innovation process, right? So the newness is what they consider to be an essential part of innovation. So I will be looking at change and innovation synonymously. So if I use the term innovation or change, I'm really looking at the same thing. I am representing the University of the West Indies Open Campus, and so I will also be looking at the University of the West Indies as a case when I am giving some illustrations. So the University of the West Indies has indicated in its first strategic plan that one of its goals was to seek to train people in disciplines of critical importance to the region and to strive for excellence in teaching and research. The UII acknowledged the fact that in order to facilitate human capital formation and foster lifelong learning for citizens, a new framework that could support knowledge-driven economies was needed. At the time, there was an unfilled demand for tertiary education and training in the Caribbean region. A large portion of the population was unable to access education due to varying reasons. And some of these include due to family obligations, or they may be living at a far distance away from where they may be able to access internet connectivity. So the UIDEC off-campus facilities were established, but then they actually began to face difficulties with the fact that students still had difficulties accessing these facilities. There are other potential students who may be having difficulty, or they may be unwilling to sacrifice their family or jobs, or who do not have the financial capability to cover travel expenses or boarding in addition to the tuition fees. So these persons were unable to fulfill their desire for acquiring higher education. It was against that background that one of the strategic objectives included in the UI's second strategic plan for 2002 to 2007 was the expansion of access to students, specifically by increasing the distance education enrollment. So the attempt to establish off-campus centers at strategic locations around the region was done to allow students who do not have access to support mechanisms similar to the main campus. And it was not long that the UII discovered that there was limited capacity to offer students physical seats on the campuses and at these off-campus sites. Therefore, it was essential that the technology be leveraged to expand the offerings to learners, especially in remote locations, to satisfy the need for a scalable student population. Therefore, to allow for greater efficiencies, structural changes were done, and as mentioned before, the UWI Open Campus was established with an autonomous structure, including a principal, registrar, chief financial officer, a librarian, and an academic programming and delivery division, which had responsibility for developing online training. The Open Campus provides flexible support in either a blended or online modality. It is important when implementing any change that institutions identify and assess the need for that innovation based on the importance relative to other needs before an innovation is being implemented, because people often become clearer about their needs only when they start doing things, that is during the implementation itself. Competency-based training has its roots in the behaviorist approach. Behaviorism is based on observable changes in behavioral patterns and new behavioral pattern being repeated until it becomes automatic. Now, for those of us who are involved, and I would imagine most of us online are involved in TVET, you'd understand the reason behind me speaking to behaviorism, because competency-based training is a big part of TVET, right? And competency is defined as an observable ability of an individual related to a specific activity that integrates knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes. So just to define that for those who are not familiar with this area. Then you have other learning theories, which include constructivism. So the theorist Vygotsky advanced that knowledge is socially constructed, meaning, and it is built upon what learners contribute and construct together. The constructivist approach to learning are grounded in the work of theorists such as Piaget, Vygotsky, John Dewey, and Jerome Bruner. An essential tool for effective online learning development and facilitation is to select and apply instructional strategies based on an understanding of andragogy. The online environment is designed to support a constructivist approach to teaching and learning. Andragogy is on the constructivist side of the learning philosophy continuum. This means that learning is an internal and interpretive process of construction on the part of the learner. Online learning platforms allow for this and is ideal for collaborative construction of socially constructed knowledge. The discussion forums enable this, but specific learning activities such as writing a storyboard can be used to guide learners to apply knowledge in actual work environment. The Open Campus actually uses an experiential learning approach, and our principal, Pro-Vice-Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Dr. Lucy Longsworth, would have made a recent presentation in this area. So experiential learning involves concrete experiences, which involves activities which are well-defined and grounded in real-life experiences, reflective observation. Learners consider implications of assumptions, beliefs, decisions, and actions, and abstract conceptualization, which basically refers to the interpretation, meaning, and significance of growth. And finally, active experimentation, which refers to the application of experience to other situations or contexts. So there we can see that there has been a shift to online training, and this involves a student-centered approach, incorporating prior learning, which may allow for experienced in technical, vocational, and higher education to be used in the matriculation process, and an integrated approach to course development. The online training also facilitates higher cognitive thinking skills and a shift from passive to active learning. The online learning environment, it facilitates more engagement. Learners are expected to complete quizzes, debates, participate in discussion forums, and other exercises which requires reflection and therefore promotes higher level thinking. Active learning approaches facilitated in the online learning platform include cooperative learning, collaborative learning, problem-based learning, project-based learning, and experiential learning. I would have mentioned the flexible approaches to matriculation. At the Open Campus, we have a prior learning assessment unit, which actually allows for persons to be matriculated using their TVET qualifications or experience on the job. And this is done through an assessment process that occurs before you enter the university. The Open Campus also uses a laddered approach to learning. So persons who might have done a diploma program would be able to use that as matriculation into a higher level program, perhaps an associate degree, moving on to the bachelor's, master's, and then to be engaged in doctoral studies. And so this is just a photo here demonstrating what the Open Campus's learning platform looks like. It is very integrated. You have access to different features such as your calendar to schedule your learning activities. And then of course, you have your student handbook and other areas which may be of use to you. Now, the online training environment does not come without limitations. There is a cost of technology and equipment and software. The learning approaches adopted may not necessarily be suited for online learning. There may be gaps in experiential learning. Also, the quality standards that have been adopted. And there's the issue of benchmarking with international standards. There are other factors which may impact the skill development in online training. These include demographic differences existing between learners studying online and those face-to-face. Researchers have indicated that more females appear to choose to study online. But although we have more females studying online, males seem to be more confident using the technology and tend to get higher paying jobs or top positions. Now, how can we use advocacy for TVET to change that? Technical support required for learners may also be a factor which impacts the skill development in the online environment. Factors relating to success in the online environment. Now, adequate quality and frequency of interaction between a student and instructor increases student course satisfaction. And these are based on empirical research that would have been conducted by researchers, whether at the UWI Open Campus or elsewhere. Instructor presence is the most critical factor which we have found contributing to student success online. And I would have also conducted some empirical research which would have collaborated or corroborated, this finding. So we need to have instructor to learner engagement with the content, also instructor to student interaction, and learner to learner engagement, as that facilitates the co-creation of knowledge. Prior experience using computers has also been found to be a factor to student success. self-directed learning, students' ability to work autonomously and manage their time effectively in the online environment is also a factor. Providing orientation services to integrate incoming cohorts into online learning, and providing a sense of community. Introducing self with videos and photos. You can see on screen here in one of our courses, we have an introduction being made using video. So the more interactive the learning environment, it's the more engaged you find students will become in the environment. They will be posing questions, they will be asking questions of their peers as well as their instructor, and there will be more co-creation of knowledge in the environment. So technological requirements made known prior to the commencement of the course is also important, because then that allows the student to become more prepared for the learning environment. And of course, and this is very topical, the health and well-being of the student. So the institution usually provides online counseling or other support that will contribute to the health and well-being of students. You may integrate content in the environment for students, such as a webinar, a link to a webinar, which may help them to develop better coping skills while they are studying. Now, what are some of the impacts of online training on skills development at the UWI Open Campus? To date, and I'm referring to this academic year, 16,441 students have enrolled in continuing and professional education courses. There has been a wide range of technical and vocational, as well as continuing and professional education courses being developed. There has also been an expansion of partnerships with industry, with multinational agencies, as well as others in government and other stakeholders. And these partnerships often involve support for the development of these specialized training, which helps to expand TVET in the region. A very important role that the Open Campus has played in rolling out online training is the capacity building of teachers in the region. And the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic has actually increased the demand on the campus to provide such facilitation. We have had 962 facilitators or lecturers trained at our sister campuses since the COVID-19. We had 752 teachers trained across the region, and these numbers are continuing. So we are still in a process of facilitating training to facilitate online training as a result of the social distancing requirements that has been brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. Another area is the development of digital certification. Oops. And of course, the range of technical and vocational education training that has been done across various sectors cannot be overlooked in terms of the impact that the campus has had on online training in skills development. At this point, I'd like to look at a framework for considering teacher competencies in an intensive online environment. This actually is a model that has been advanced by Mishra and Kohler. So there you see the importance of the technology, the pedagogy, knowledge, and content has been outlined here. There are overlaps, and basically what the model is putting forward is that teacher engagement is a critical success factor in the online environment. Building teacher competencies to facilitate online or blended learning instruction is very important. And so this TPAP model fosters integration of technology, content, knowledge, and pedagogy. Pedagogical approaches should involve learner competencies, preferred learning approaches, and characteristics. And we would have looked at some of the learning approaches before. So technology is inherently embedded in the content delivery and influential in approaches to teaching. Now, persons who are involved in instruction would argue that the technology supports the learning and not necessarily drives it. It's really the learning approaches that are adopted, and of course the facilitation skills. Then there is a technical competence which must be demonstrated together with content proficiency and pedagogical knowledge. So how does the technology integration enables positive learning outcomes? A study that was carried out in Africa shows how this happens in that context. And I believe, or I submit, this can be applicable to the region. So they found that there was an increase in students' motivation, improvement in teacher training and teaching itself, as I would have demonstrated earlier. There was an improvement in the understanding of how to make effective use of technology. There was also an increase in the effectiveness in education systems and infrastructure. Then, of course, the emergence of new methods of learning and teaching, and importantly, the increased access to resources, information, and knowledge, which we would have spoken about through OERs, MOOCs, and so on. Just to show you a demonstration of how media is embedded in content delivery. So for one of our courses, a step-by-step guide to exporting, well, this was actually an online workshop that was done in collaboration or on behalf of one of our partners. And as you can see, we have a video presentation which is embedded in the learning management system. Another example of how media can be embedded in the content delivery is this illustration where in the learning environment, we have meeting rooms, so Blackboard Collaborate can facilitate instruction. So you may have a group size of 300, but you can use the technology to have smaller groups. So students can be divided in, say, groups of 20 or 15 or however many you would want them to be divided in, to have smaller project-based learning outcomes being achieved. And then finally, I would like to show you, because we have been talking about the importance of instructor engagement and the importance of having teachers training to be able to facilitate competent delivery in the online environment. The teacher training program that the University of the West Indies Open Campus delivers, it is designed for flexibility, so it can be customized in terms of the level of content, the time frame in which our partners desire that training to be conducted in. This particular one here has two components, and one component involves the course development for online learning, and then the other component involves the facilitation element. So here you see in this component one, we have the design phase, which really looks at laying the foundation, theoretical underpinnings of instructional design. And in phase two, it looks at the content development of the course material. So while you are learning, you're actually engaged in active development of a course material. So there's the experiential learning coming into play there. And at the end, you review and revise the course materials based on feedback from the facilitator of this particular course. In component two, you have a mastering instruction in online environment. And this gives you an introduction to Moodle, or it could be another learning management system depending on what the client requires and the capability of our experts in the campus. So we would have some capacity in other areas, other learning management systems. Then it also involves the managing and facilitating online instruction. Just to pause here to say, all the instructors at the UE Open Campus would have had to undergo this particular training before they're able to facilitate learning in the online environment. So it really looks at the whole business of how to develop strategies for better engaging your learners in the environment. It also looks at competency development in particular areas of assessment and so on. And then there's the area of embracing student-centered delivery. So this is a very key course that the Open Campus has been delivering to develop competency in the region in the area of teacher training in online and blended learning. And a lot of our stakeholder institutions, educational institutions, have been approaching the Open Campus because they have recognized that this is very important in rolling out any online training in order to optimize on their ability to develop skills in the region. Other courses on offer at the Open Campus would include those that are listed here, and actually those are courses that are listed in offered in Trinidad. So for those persons who are physically in Trinidad, you may or may not be familiar with those program offerings. Around the region, we have several continuing and professional education programs that are delivered online. So for example, we have programs in transformational leadership, supervisor management, project management, etc., which tends to be targeting the higher level skills. And so in conclusion, TVET systems and institutions need to develop their own rigorous quality assurance processes and practices. They need to embed continuous self-improvement in all of their operations, monitor and assure quality in their curriculum, pedagogy, delivery and assessment methods and qualifications, and provide evidence of relevance to industry and societal needs. The leveraging of the technology cannot be overstated because it's also a very important factor in not just be used as a tool for delivery, but in terms of how you strategize in the learning management system and create your learning activities to achieve the specified learning outcomes. Thank you.